Welcome to the Monday Morning Mixtape. On this week's show, we're going to be having a debate about playlists versus albums, and I suppose digital versus analog, physical media. So stay tuned. Welcome to debate. Great minds might be listening.
I was about to say they're certainly not here.
So were we? Because it's something that keeps popping up, I suppose, when we're talking about stuff about like albums versus playlists, where we're kind of like Marcus and Jen, they're from a different generation to us, and although they would have grown up with
the
physical
generation
media,
of covered wagons and horse-drawn carts, and the generation of spaceships and such like.
Where they're kind of like, I suppose, more kind of like, well, not that. No, sure, we all would have started using Spotify and all that. Yeah, that's no excuse.
Yeah, exactly. I use Tidal more than physical.
You're just wrong, Mark. You're just wrong.
That's the end of the show. Bye, everybody.
But so we're going like. This is not a debate.
I do not agree. You are
this
wrong.
This is an assassination. But I suppose it's kind of like one of the main things that keeps popping up about kind of like playlists versus albums, and then that also kind of like incorporates kind of like I think to a certain thing like vinyl or cassettes, physical media versus digital media. I think they're kind of like locked in together.
Exactly.
To a certain point.
who doesn't want to listen to stuff on mini disc?
Mini disc is starting to make a comeback as well. It is.
Laura, I know you invested a lot of time and money on mini disc, but it's never coming back.
I know. I cry myself to sleep every night thinking about all those wasted mini discs. But anyway,
But so I suppose kind of like it's like before we get into things, like both have their own kind of like pros and cons, obviously, and kind of like even with the digital media versus kind of like physical media, there's pros and cons to everything. We're not really saying that either one is right or wrong. It is going to be down to the
someone has to win.
But at the same point, we are right, and physical media is superior. As well as albums.
How can you assume that I'm on the same side as you? You don't know. You're not prepared.
How can physical media, like if you can think you can approximate the exact like sound of the master copy with your caveman vinyl, then you're what's wrong with the world.
But we'll get into that later. And the thing is, I'll be editing this so I can edit it any way that I want and kind of like just get little bits of it. I agree.
Digital, isn't it?
Yes.
If we were doing that on vinyl, you couldn't edit any of this.
Yes, but it's a different medium. We're not talking about music here. We're talking about talk show.
We're not talking about music.
We're talking about it.
You painted yourself into a corner here, I'm afraid. Right?
It's going to be some weird kind of like Doctor Who thing, isn't it? Where it's like a camera on a TV screen. No.
Indeed, yes.
Turns out we're in a menagerie and we're an alien's pets.
Yes.
But I suppose starting off, we'll get started with kind of like the albums versus playlists.
Let's start at the beginning.
Kind of a thing.
We always should
so Mark, you're very much, I presume, on the playlist side of things.
I would be. Now, I can see, as you've said before, I can see the merits for both, but I do tend to prefer a playlist point of view than albums. Why I do it now, or why I did it originally anyway, was because, like, I think it was because of the MP3 player, to be honest, more than anything, because
it's your fault, Wayne.
It just opens it up, because you have all your music that you loved all in one place, and you could just shuffle through it. You didn't have to listen to one album at a time, or kind of chop and change around, or make your own mixtapes if you wanted. It was just the way of like making the ultimate mixtape of your own favorite music, and I think that's very appealing to a lot of people, me included. And then when it came to the likes of like Spotify and Tidal, when they started adding kind of like intelligence behind them, where it was like, hey, we noticed you listen to these things, so we've made you this curated playlist, and you're like, this is all
screams of dying prostitutes.
How do they know I love that? Thanks, Spotify. You're welcome, Jack.
And then in the middle of it, like some fucking kind of like Justin Bieber song that they're promoting, kind of like,
baby.
But like,
that's all right.
I would say like it's really It's really nice, kind of like the one that I've talked about it before, but I would say it's really cool. On Spotify, they have what they call a time capsule playlist, where it's like, this is stuff you would have listened to in the past, and you listen to it, and you're like, yes, this is, but not in the past when I had Spotify. In the past when I didn't have Spotify. How do you know this?
It's
That
very
is
spot
super
on, actually,
creepy,
as
yeah.
well. It's kind
Yeah,
of
like I don't listen to Spotify much anymore, but when I did have Spotify, I was like, hey, why don't you have a listen to what you would have listened to back in the 80s or back in the 90s when you would have been a teenager? I'm like, you weren't around when I was a teenager.
so there was one of my, I remember it was
Yeah.
like early 2000 playlists or something like that, and it was like all the stuff that I would have been listening to at the time, but like the actual, and
Yes.
not even kind of like the singles from some of the albums,
Yes, but
like
the deep
actual,
cuts that you would have actually
Yeah.
really enjoyed. And
And I
like,
was
how
like,
did you know
what
that was
the
my favourite
fuck?
song off
But,
that
you
album,
know,
you creepy bastard?
how smart it actually
Yeah.
the algorithm is
algorithms, yeah.
too. It's like, kind of like it picks up on like,
Very
oh, you listen to
suspicious.
this and you listen to that, so they listen to this one and that will be there.
And
it's
this
like,
would have
what?
probably been the one that you would have liked the most off this album. I'm like, how did you know that? Get out of my head. And I'm
And
like,
they're
oh,
getting more and more
I've let you
clever
into my
each
head.
day because you can see it. Like, I only did it recently in Spotify anyway. They have like the start a radio station functionality where you pick a song and you start a radio station off that, what they call a radio station, and basically just creates
Yeah.
a unending playlist of songs in a similar vein to that. And as it go through, you can like them if you really like it, or you can just say, no, that's really off the mark. And it's been done so many times that I don't have to even like it or dislike it at all, because I'm just listening to this and it's like, yeah, these are all kind of like I threw on like a Linkin Park song and it just went into like several other bands.
It just shuts itself off.
Oh, that's very dark. But I mean,
I didn't mean it like that. I just meant because Linkin Park are terrible.
All right. Okay. That's terrible. But I mean, they've been like Pandora, I suppose, would have been one of the first
Pandora,
ones to do
yeah,
that,
God,
really,
yeah.
I suppose. Because I mean, Pandora radio is such like,
That blew her mind, and it was like you had to like VPN it as well because you couldn't.
you couldn't really get it all that well over in Ireland. But yeah, that would have been the first one to start. And I was like, oh my God, you can listen to music for free. And it's like, oh, you can pick an artist you like, and then it'll just like, it'll play you all the music of that artist.
iHeartRadio as well
Yeah.
was one of the first ones as
Oh
well.
my
wasn't
God,
it?
that was mind blowing at the time. It was like that, Mark. It was kind of, okay, what music do you like? Well, I like this song by this artist. Let's make a playlist out of this. And like that was like, let's do a radio station based off this. And then you could kind of add in other ones to kind of slightly, it was almost like Google Maps nowadays. Like, I want to go from point A to point B, but I would also like to go to point C, D, and E on the way there. So you'd throw in a few other artists, a few other songs to kind of like, here, I'm going to throw this like curveball at you. Deal with that, Pandora. And I'd be like, yep, okay, I can do that.
Listen to Metallica,
Here's your
but along the
playlist.
way, I want to listen to Bach.
And it would handle that.
So I suppose what you're probably saying in a roundabout way, one of the plus sides of playlist is that you have stuff curated for you.
Yeah, I would say so. And I know where you're going with this, but before you do, like, before I'll beat you at the pass. Before you say what you're going to say, what I like about it as well is that it's just a really good kind of way of kind of mixing all your favorite songs together, and also discovering new music that you normally wouldn't come across. Like, there's no, like, going back to Spotify, there's another playlist that they have where it's like, based on the songs you've listened to, these are songs you haven't listened to that we think you'd like. Would you like these? And they also have kind of ones where it's like, based on just your listens, we've also done these 4 kind of mixtape-ish playlists that we think you'd like as well. So yeah, they're definitely curated, but there's also the element of finding new music through these, especially in the days of like Spotify and Tidal now.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's very hard to find
absolutely.
new music as well because there's such a saturation of stuff out there. So, but what I would say also to that is, well, on the surface, that looks all very, very good and shiny with the whole kind of like playlist things and having kind of like your music curated for you. Like what's happening on YouTube at the moment is with the algorithm, if it decides that there's some people that it doesn't want people to listen to, they're totally and utterly cut out from it. And as well, if Spotify are being, say, promoted by it or getting big money from Warner Brothers or whatever, they're only going to push Warner Brothers artists. They're only going to do this and do that. So there's a lot of music that you probably would like, and then all of a sudden you have someone telling you what you should like. Like, that can be very, very dangerous. It starts off as kind of like, oh yeah, God, it's right about this and that, but then it starts getting into a thing psychologically, I think, where you kind of go, I should be listening to this, I should like that, I should be doing this and I should be doing that. Whereas with kind of like, I think with like albums, kind of like say thing, or physical media, sometimes you have to go and search for stuff, which is better. Like one of the things, like this is digital as well, kind of like, you know, but why hold kind of thing, say with Bandcamp doesn't do playlists. It's like albums or EPs or singles for artists. So I think I'm starting to grow more and more kind of like fonder of Bandcamp for the way it is, just with its artist friendly thing. But one of the things that I quite like about Bandcamp is that you can put notifications on it, which will tell you if an artist that you like is after buying another record. So that can be kind of a way of kind of going, oh, well, if he likes that, or if that, you know, it kind of gives you a little bit more exploratory kind of a thing. And it's more kind of like friendly towards independent artists.
It's
Whereas
kind of
I
a more
think the bigger
transparent kind of way of like creating a social media kind of side to it.
Yeah, and as well, I think it makes you do a bit of work. And like, I mean, this is one of the things I think as well, kind of like say physical media has over digital media as well. There's something satisfying and something kind of like about buying something. And as well, that kind of like sometimes, like we've talked about this before as well, that if you go off and you buy an album, you're not just going to listen to it once or listen to one song on it. You're going to go, right, I'm after investing in this.
Yeah.
So you
I listen to every song on this. I'm going to learn them off by heart. I'm going to read the liner notes. I'm going to appreciate the artwork. I'm going to, even if a song I don't particularly like is on it, you're going to listen to it until you do fucking like it.
Well, this is the thing as well.
At the time when like we started listening to albums, you probably would have been like, well, at best I think maybe an album once a week or maybe once every 2-3 weeks or once a month. So in the meantime, well, I've got this now, I better listen to it, or I listen to nothing. So
yeah, and as well, it's kind of like, it's not that, it's nearly forcing yourself, not forcing yourself to like something, because you're not going to like
something.
It's appreciation, and it's taking the time as well, because most things, if you like something the first time you listen to it,
chances are it's a bit bland and throwaway and poppy.
It's like,
that's a bit disparaging. I don't mean it like that. I mean, as in like it's a bit, if it's a bit too catchy, chances are it's a bit bubblegummy and it's a bit like
you're not going to like it 200 listens into.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the stuff that I ended up like absolutely loving, I didn't like first time round. I was on repeated listen. You kind of go, oh my god, actually, there's this one little hook at the end that I'm starting to really appreciate, or something that I found a bit difficult to listen to first time round. You're suddenly going, oh my god, it's totally opened up. If you listen to it, suddenly the soundscape opens up. And oftentimes it's stuff that I found a bit hard to listen to, for not even hard, but just didn't appreciate first time round on an album. They're often the songs that I kind of go, right, okay, that's my favourite song off the album over time.
And I see where you're coming from, Laura, but like, I'm kind of slightly different in that regard. It's more stuff I would like from very early on the get-go, like in an album. I'm talking about now, not a playlist. But what I find like really works when you actually start listening to a bit more is that you start kind of peeling back the layers and you find kind of deeper kind of nuances, or when you start really enjoying something and you take the time to really appreciate it and kind of digest it, you start seeing it in more of what it's intended to be and not what it's just at the surface.
See, I think the danger as well with playlists is playlists will be mostly made of band singles.
Yeah.
You do not get, this is kind of like when you go off listen to playlists when we're talking about bands and stuff like that, where I'm kind of like, oh my god, why are you doing that? Because you cannot get a full
You don't get a full rounded picture of a band.
It's people just will, for the singles, they will be, especially years ago and probably more so now, like bigger bands, they're like, you need to have 3-minute radio friendly song that will promote your album and promote you as a band so you can make money from live touring. So the whole thing is, the singles will not necessarily be kind of like, there's many fucking albums I can mention that kind of like the singles that release off absolutely nothing like the rest of the album. Not really a good snapshot of what the artists are. It gives like a taster, all right.
Yeah, it's like the sprinkles on the top of an ice cream. Like, and most people are not going to sit down and just eat a whole jar of sprinkles. If you do, you get a fucking horrible headache.
Yeah, that's very good.
Dose of the shits.
Yeah, but like,
I think some playlists are like that. But like, when I've come across some now, and I have looked at them in comparison to albums, and yeah, the popular kind of singles would be in there, no doubt about it. But a lot of the other songs would be kind of mixed through it. It'd be less. It'd be less just their singles and more kind of, it's kind of a compilation of the greatest hits. And for those ones, I think it's a very good way of getting a snapshot of a band very quickly without going back through their career. Now, it's not going to get you the exact feel of the band itself, because a lot of these bands that we've been talking about in the past do, I think you were talking about it and I kind of cut you off, but like do have a tendency to curate their own album. So their album itself, if you listen to it from the first song and through second to the end, it is a kind of a curated journey in that album. Now, with some